The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy.
Yeah, hey everybody, great to be with you all today. And I was able to go to camp as well. It was a great week. I can testify there's some low-level dehydration, sunburn, a few jellyfish stings, and I'm just talking about myself at this point. But really, it was a great time and glad to be back in a sound body, maybe not mine yet, but I'm getting there. Would you mind standing with me for the reading of God's Word today? We're going to be continuing on in our series in Colossians here in chapter 2. Verses 8 and 16 through 23. See to it that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and the elemental spiritual forces of this world rather than on Christ. Therefore, do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink, with regard to a religious festival, a new moon celebration, or a Sabbath day. These are a shadow of the things that were to come. The reality, however, is found in Christ. Do not let anyone who delights in false humility and the worship of angels disqualify you. Such a person goes into great detail about what they've seen. They're puffed up with idle notions by their unspiritual mind. They've lost connection with the head, from whom the whole body, supported and held together by its ligaments and sinews, grows as God causes it to grow. Since you died with Christ to the elemental spiritual forces of this world, why, as though you still belong to the world, do you submit to its rules? Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch. These rules, which have to do with things that are all destined to perish with use, are based on merely human commands and teachings. Such regulations indeed have an appearance of wisdom with their self-imposed worship, false humility, their harsh treatment of the body, but they lack any value in restraining sensual indulgence. That's the reading of God's Word today. His people today said, Amen. You may be seated. I hold in my hands one of these. We call it the Bible, a Bible. For many years, of course, it was not called that. It was just some books and some letters. But now we call it the Bible. And when we come to this, we hold in our hands, when we pick it up, we hold a world that it describes. We hold something that describes reality in a particular way. It talks about life and death, supernatural, the reality, super reality. But to begin to see the way this sees, to see the way the Bible sees, demands we at least take its claims about life, death, reality, super reality seriously. How do we do that? How can we take these claims seriously? Well, let me begin by giving you one way that we don't do that. One way I think that many modern people try to keep the Bible's claims at arm's length is through a view I want to talk about just for a moment called detached neutrality. Detached neutrality. This is kind of the way most folks in your neighborhood, probably apartment complex, in your dorm, they approach the Bible. It sort of goes like this. They say, you know what? I like the Bible when I stumble onto a verse that inspires me, comforts me. Ooh, that Psalm 23, it just hits real good. The Lord is my shepherd. He's going to give me everything I need, which includes, of course, my new, video game console, new car, new vacation. Praise God. He's my shepherd and my cup runneth over. Thank you very much. But the world the Bible describes, it's too weird. It's too complicated and impenetrable to really make a difference in my life, my class, my job, the work, or with that girl I really like. We kind of treat the Bible, in other words, like we treat that odd relative that comes once a year for Thanksgiving dinner, like, glad you're here. You can stay as long as you don't make it weird. All right? Now, you might be true, but if you can't help me get a job or a date, well, then what's the point of you? Now, two problems with that approach. Number one, I think that view assumes that the main point of life is to get a job or a date. But how do you know that's true? I mean, if you've been on a bad date recently, like some of you have been on a bad date, like that guy definitely did not look like his profile picture. He lied to you. Some of you went out with that girl at one time after that first coffee, she thought it was forever. Ooh, you might even now be thinking, if that's you, that your romantic relationship, is that even the point? But second and far larger, an honest reading of this won't allow you to remain at arm's length. An honest reading demands you deal seriously with the Bible's claims about life, death, your soul, reality, the supernatural, one of which is this. Here's one of the claims. There is a world, we're going to look at this today, a world behind and beyond our world, which not only exists, but seeks to influence us. There's a world behind and beyond our world, which not only exists, but seeks to influence us. And that reality is not only something that the Bible in general insists, but it's something that Colossians in specific screams. That's why I love the book while we're looking at it. Colossians is kind of like, sorry for the old reference here, it's kind of like that phone ringing in that movie, The Matrix. Remember that? You pick up the phone. What happens? You get sucked through it into the real world. It's kind of like the wardrobe in the Chronicles of Narnia. You step through it in order to see another world. It's kind of like that spinning top. Remember that in the movie Inception? You can reach out and touch it. It reminds you of another world beyond the world you can see. And so my hope today is for us to reach out for a moment and touch the spinning top of a particular phrase the book of Colossians gives us that helps us see that larger world the Bible describes. It gives us this phrase that moves us away from detached neutrality and towards a supernatural worldview. Paul drops this phrase on us in a couple of spots here. In Colossians 2:8 and 2:20, here's the phrase, stoicheia tu cosmu. Oh yeah, sounds like a new sitcom coming to you on NBC this fall with a couple of, friends up in Chicago or New York. No, what is this talk? So stoicheia tu cosmu. What is that? Paul said there's stoicheia of the cosmos, stoicheia of the universe. What are stoicheia? Well, different translations sort of give us something like this. So like, first of all, the basic principles. One translation gives you the elementary principles or the underlying principles. The King James gives us a wonderful phrase, the rudiments of the world. The NIV gives us a great but kind of awkward translation when it says, this was the one we read, the elemental spiritual forces of the world. Stoicheia are first things, what the New Testament also refers to as principalities. Principalities. Now, possibly at this point, you hear this word, principalities. For those of us who grew up in 90s Christianity, you may be imagining at this point, because you saw a weird movie or you read a weird book, you're imagining like this huge, gigantic demon sitting on top of a globe, plotting global domination, cackling with glee, rubbing hands together as he moves chess pieces across an invisible chessboard. That is not this. That is not Colossians or Paul. And by the way, for all the first timers, you're here today, non-Christians, I'm sorry for all the weird stuff Christians write and do. Sometimes we go into the wardrobe and we take a wrong turn. We don't end up in Narnia. We end up getting left behind. Oh, you see over there. Sorry, yes. All right. Mission accomplished. But look at the word here, principalities. Principalities. Notice that word principle, and their principle as in the first thing. Principalities are first things, basic things, the ABCs of life. That's stoicheia tu cosmu. And Paul says two things about what they do here in Colossians 2. The first is in verse 8. He says, see to it that no one takes you, what's the word? Come on, say it. Captive. Through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and the elemental spiritual forces of the world. Stoicheia tu cosmu, rather than on Christ. So he's telling us that principalities, first things, ABCs, if we're not careful, they can take anyone captive. Now, some of you say, Morgan, that can't happen. I'm a smart person. I'm a modern person. Or maybe you're thinking, I'm a Christian. That can't happen. But remember, Paul is writing to who? Come on. Christians, to a church. He's telling us that anyone, Christian, non-Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, whoever, can be a prisoner of principalities. And he doubles down in verse 20. Since you died, he says, Christians at Colossae, with Christ to the elemental spiritual forces of the world. Why? As though you still belong to the world, why do you submit to its rules? Verse 20 shows us that even though Christ had freed them, they have reverted. They've gone backwards. Some of these Christians in Colossae have come under the power of a principality. Say, Morgan, kind of unsettling, kind of makes me nervous. I know, it sort of rattles the cages, does it not, of modernity, which says all we have is all we can see. It also rattles certain Protestant theological traditions, which have boiled the Christian life down to just a one-time prayer you pray. But Colossians tells us for the rest of your life, there are stoichia, there are principalities, there are first things, ABCs in life that try to pull us back to them. And if we're not careful, can make us submit to them. You're like, is Paul threatening my eternal standing with Christ? No, he's not. But he's saying, even if the door to that jail cell of your sin has been flung open and you walked out at one point, you can still, if you're not careful, get dragged back in or allow yourself to go back. Some of you may know the Marvel character Daredevil. Let me introduce you to him real quick. I like him quite a lot. His name, real name, it's fictional. Matt Murdock, but he's a superhero with super senses. He lives in Hell's Kitchen in New York City. He fights evil at night, but practices law by day, defends the poor and the vulnerable. Now, don't get fooled by the costume and the imagery and the name. The character has a strong Christian faith, and that's central to his identity. Now, Daredevil could have been, but wasn't, based on a real-life someone named William Stringfellow. Dr. Stringfellow was a 20th century Christian American lawyer, practiced law by day, but battled supernatural evil by night. He was a theologian. And he went to Harvard, but felt called to live in the inner city of New York. And he moved to Harlem. And when he moved from Harvard to Harlem, from the economic top to the disadvantaged bottom, he began to wrestle and look at Colossians 2. And he saw the power of principalities at work on the streets in everyday life. Went on to write about them and listed out all the stoichia that he saw. He wrote this: they include all institutions, all ideologies, all images, all bureaucracies, all nations, all idols. They are capitalism, Maoism, humanism, Mormonism, astrology, the Puritan work ethic, science, scientism, white supremacy, patriotism, plus many, many more. Sports, sex, technology, money, the family, the principalities, and powers are legion. What's he saying? Let me summarize. He's saying anything apart from Christ that's your first thing can become your worst thing. Anything apart from Christ that's your first thing can become your worst thing. Anything that's a first thing, a good thing, a basic thing like the family, like money from your job, like love of country, when it's raised to an absolute and put at the top, it becomes something that demands you submit to it, and it begins to go to work on your soul and warp you. Paul says, don't submit to those things. Don't go back to those things. You used to live for them, maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously. This is where you were. Don't go back. Don't submit. Let's ask, how do these things go to work on us? How do stoichia work on us? Let me give you now three ways I think we see in our culture. 3 ways stoichia in 21st century modern American life. 3 ways stoichia seek our submission. 3 basic things that try to pull us back. We'll call them image, institution, and ideology. Image, institution, ideology. First, image. Your image is a first thing because it's really oftentimes the first thing people see about you, right? The thing that you sort of release out to the world, the first thing people perceive about you, because there's you, then there's the image of you. Not the image of God, but the image of you. All you represent, how you're seen, how you kind of allow yourself to be seen, but that image is fallen, and because it's fallen, it seeks to enslave you. Now, a way to see this is to ask this question. We're going to explore this in church, yes. Is Marilyn Monroe really dead? I'm not asking whether Elvis or Tupac are really dead, because we all know they're not. They're alive and living well somewhere in New Mexico, Arizona. Thank you very much. But is Marilyn Monroe really dead? Because there was Norma Jean Mortensen, the person, and Marilyn Monroe, the image. Now, Marilyn, the person, has been long dead, but her image is more alive than ever. Don't believe me, just watch. Here is, and I've seen her with my own eyes, a highly controversial 26-foot statue of Marilyn Monroe in Palm Springs, California. Here it is. This is her image. It's not really Norma Jean, not really even Marilyn, but it's a highly sexualized version of her which seeks to be worshiped. You say, Morgan, you're being pretty critical. Well, I think I've got both conservative parents on my side who don't like their kids getting flashed every day by Marilyn's undergarments and unmentionables on the way to school. And I've got feminists on my side who resent a woman being, reduced and recreated to something that, sort of accommodates the male gaze. And I would think, on the other hand, I would also have God on my side, because let's ask, is that how God saw Marilyn, or is there more? Now, you also have an image which seeks mastery over you. Your fallen image wants you to surrender to it. How do we do that? How do we surrender to a fallen image? Well, our fallen image pushes us, calls us, wants us to submit to maybe incessant beauty products. We feel bad and we look in the mirror, we try to adjust, accommodate other people perhaps. Maybe it calls us to submit to it by telling a lie about who we are. We sort of spin the truth, right? Somehow we want to allow our self-worth to be determined by our net worth. Your image pushes you to these things, and in the end, I want to tell you, if your image gains control, mastery over you, it will demand your life. Think about how many celebrities, like Marilyn, for any number of reasons, in some way, have literally given their life, sacrificed themselves for their image. Because the thief comes to what Jesus tells us? Steal, kill, and destroy. Your image wants you to die for it. But I want to tell you, there is one image, one perfect image that has died for you, given his life for you. His name is Jesus. And he, as Paul wrote in Colossians 1, he is the image of the invisible God, who came to show you God's immeasurable love for you, how he made you. What does this mean? Henri Nouwen, the thinker, philosopher, he says this: you are not what others, or even you, think about yourself. You are not what you do. You are not what you have. You are a full member of the human family, having been known before you were conceived and molded in your mother's womb. Look in the mirror each day and claim your true identity. As a personal spiritual practice, claim and reclaim your primal identity as a beloved daughter or son of a personal creator. But it's not only image that can drag us back and make us submit. It's not only an image, it's also institutions that can do this. An institution becomes a fallen first thing, a principality, when its guiding purpose, hear me, is its own survival. When it will sacrifice anything and anyone, including you, in order to live on, which means this. Some of you face this in your work, at your job, maybe on your team or your class. Like a business, a company, a government can become a fallen principality. First thing gone bad, like a whistleblower, come on. They get sacrificed, run under the bus. People who raise legitimate issues get fired. Maybe the business, the corporation pumps out pollutants, won't admit to it, gets caught, won't pay their taxes. They sacrifice employees so that the life of the company goes on. But I want to tell you, we as Christians should look in the mirror, because even the church of Jesus can become a fallen first thing as well. Because if and when a church's foundational principle is not the glory of God and the service of others, but its own survival, here are a few earmarks of if and when that happens. Sometimes now, if a church becomes a fallen first thing, sometimes members are thrown under the bus for disagreeing, for doubting. I'm not talking about people who misbehave and have to be asked to leave. because we've done that here. Because the New Testament communicates that's part of my responsibility, our responsibility. That's unpleasant in order to protect people. That's happened, but I'm talking about simple disagreement or doubting. When a church is a fallen first thing, now predators get protected. Or pastors care more about numbers than people. Now, I care a lot about our numbers. I hope you do too. The New Testament cares about them. How often does the New Testament name numbers? A lot. And after all, there's a whole book called, come on, Numbers. Yeah, but I care about you more. And when a church has become a fallen first thing, it'll even demand the life of its shepherd, its pastor. I'm not talking about doing hard work. I'm talking about sacrificial service, which I poured out in abundance, driving your children all week at camp. I'm talking about the demand to give more and more, never say no to anyone's request, to always submit to what everyone wants. How many pastors have quit or killed themselves, taken their own life because they can't take the constant pressure and demands? The answer is many. Oh, if you've seen the Jason Bourne movies, arguably the best line of the series appears both in the first and the third film, which is really the final film. The other two don't count, thank you. Spicy take. But in the Bourne Ultimatum, Jason Bourne is now on a rooftop into the movie No Way Out. In the previous scene, he's allowed this assassin who's been tracking him to live. He should have taken his life, but he's become this human being once more, allowed him to live. The assassin, though, tracks him down, holds him at gunpoint on a rooftop, and asks him, why didn't you take me out? Why didn't you take the shot? And Jason Bourne looks at him and describes the life of living in a fallen first thing. He says, look at what they make you give. Look at what they make you give. A fallen institution makes you give your life for it. But there's one good shepherd who has offered his life up for us, his institution, if you will, the church. He's laid down his life for his friends, for his sheep. And when we remember that, and now we point to him, we are enabled to live on rightly in our community. There's image, there's institution, and finally there are ideologies. This is probably the easiest one, I think, to see at work in our culture today. What's an ideology? Basically, an ideology is most often any ism. Any ism. It's actually what Paul is probably taking aim at here in Colossians 2. We kind of read through that cryptic passage. Like he's probably, a lot of scholars think, N.T. Wright does, critiquing Judaism in specific and its rules, its regulations that were designed to keep Gentiles out. Doesn't name it by name, but he describes it. An ideology takes a good thing, I'm going to list out a few here, a good thing like, for example, love of country, a good thing, and makes it an ultimate thing like nationalism. It takes something good, like the government, and turns it into politicism. It takes something good made by God, like your ethnicity, and turns it into racism, ethnocentrism. It takes a good thing, like critique of injustice, which Jesus did, but turns it into Marxism. How can you tell? How can you tell if an ideology has become a principality? How can you tell? René Girard, who is follow me, a French born-again theologian, they do exist, says you can tell something has crossed from first thing to worst thing if it has a scapegoat. A scapegoat. The scapegoat, you may know, was the animal Jewish priests laid their hands on, confessed the sin of the people over it, sent it out into the wilderness to take the blame for the people and ultimately to die on its own. And Girard says every fallen ideology, he says, you'll notice, it creates someone, a category of person who can be blamed and cast out of the collective for the remainder and the remnant to feel better about themselves. Let me give you a few examples. Sigmund Freud, psychology, cast out the dad. Get rid of dad, especially God as dad, and you'll be fine. So Freud cast out the father. Marxists cast out the rich. Capitalists cast out the poor. Nietzsche cast out the weak. Hitler cast out the Jews. The Jews in the Bible cast out the Gentiles. The Gentiles cast out the Jews. Liberals cast out the conservatives. Conservatives cast out the liberals. Independents cast out both. Let me ask you a tough question here. In our nation, have we ever scapegoated a group? Ever blamed a group and said, they must go for us to be okay? Have you ever scapegoated someone in your life like, hey, all my problems would be solved if they would just go. It's really their fault. I am who I am where I am. This is a way humanity has always tried to deal with its own guilt, its own sins, with its own problems. We know something isn't right, but we can't fix it. And so we outsource the blame to other humans to let ourselves off the hook. We feel better, but it makes us worse. Oh, it's like drinking salt water. But the good news of the gospel is this, hear me. Humanity already has a scapegoat. Did you know that? Someone who's had hands laid on him. Someone who's had the people's sins put on him, cast outside of, and died outside the city. Jesus took the blame for us so that we would not have to become someone else's scapegoat and that we would not scapegoat others. And here we see how the gospel deals with principalities, first things, ABCs. On the cross, Jesus became the ultimate willing scapegoat when the all of humanity came against the one true God. And it sure looked like Satan was winning, did it? It did. But when Jesus was nailed and cast out, what was really being nailed and cast out, what was really being defeated was the false sense of transcendency that ideologies create. Oh, they say, we are ultimate, become like us or be cast out. But Jesus said not. He didn't say become like me. He said, I will become like you. I will take on your flesh, your weaknesses. And one day he said, I'll even take on your own sin and blame. And he did. And unlike every other scapegoat, when Jesus died, he rose and he showed that every other ideology turned principality is false. It's non-ultimate. He showed all their power to be weak and hollow and temporary and false. And that is why Paul can say in Colossians that Christ made a public spectacle of all of them because the image, hear me, of God died for you, that you could reflect his image, become who you were born and meant to be. He, Jesus, created the institution of the church. He is the head of it, Paul says. Not me, not Morgan. Some of you are like, thank God. It's the first thing he said all day I agree with, You aren't the head of the church either, by the way, just as a reminder. And Jesus defeated every ideology by not casting you out when you could not measure up. Oh, but he became like you and was cast out for you. He defeated all first things, every principality by becoming the ultimate first thing. And when we receive him and worship him as our first thing, now every other thing, all those things become our second thing, blessed second things. They're put in their right place and they become blessings and not curses in the world, in our lives. How do we apply this? Let me give you quickly 2 ways. How do we defeat the power of principalities, first things in our lives? 2 ways. First, we can continually defeat them by first of all, living sacramentally. Many years for Christmas, some of you know this, especially if you follow her on social media, my wife makes cinnamon rolls. And if you find yourself on the nice list, you may get some this year, sort of your hashtag Christmas goals right there for you. Now she's gone back to work, so not as many get made, but for many years, she was like a virtual Santa's workshop of cinnamon rolls, like bread and dough and icing galore. And many years on Christmas Eve, she would bring pan after pan of these to church right here for our services and give them away to some of you, most often to single folks who didn't have a family, and most often of all to homeless who join us, the unhoused on Christmas Eve. And on one Christmas Eve, then on her way home from church with our 4 kids in the car, Dad went home separately because of doing multiple services. She pulled off an overpass. She had some extra pans. Pulled off an overpass right off here off 183. Left the kids in the car. Went out with pans and trays of cinnamon rolls in hand and found a homeless man in the dark. When he found her, others began to come. They began to circle around her. And she asked him, would you like something to eat? I made these for you. Would you like some homemade cinnamon rolls on Christmas Eve? And they said yes. And more came and gathered around her until she got a small crowd. Our kids are watching from the car like, what is happening? What is Mom doing? And then she asked him, can I pray for you? Pray that God would be good to them and bless them and meet them that Christmas Eve. That is living sacramentally. Taking the first things, regular things, ABC's bread of life, and turning them into a gift that blesses others. It's when the ordinary things of life, Stringfellow said, are rendered extraordinary. That which is merely worldly is transfigured. That which is most common becomes a means of worship, and each act or event of everyday life becomes sacramental, a sign and celebration of God's care for every act and everyday life in the world. Second way we defeat the principalities, not just living sacramentally, but living baptismally. Because Paul mentions, I love this, one ism that's above every other ism, and it is baptism. Baptism is water made sacred in real time, because for Paul in the early church, baptism was the way into identifying with Christ's victory over every power. And Paul writes us, he's the head, come on, over every power, every authority. And then it's like he takes a detour. Like, did Paul get lost? No, it's on purpose. In him you are also circumcised, speaking of Jews here, with a circumcision not performed by human hands. Your whole self, ruled by the flesh, was put off when you were circumcised by Christ. Here it is, having been buried with him in baptism, in which you were also raised with him through, what does it say? Your faith in the working of God. Why is this mentioned? It's because when God called, quick Bible lesson, God called Abraham to be circumcised. It signified a new beginning, a new family, a new lineage, a new way of living in the world. And that's why Paul says water baptism is like that. It's a way in to a new family, not done by hands of people, but by God himself. It shows now you've got a new first thing, a new beginning, a new lineage, a new way to defeat the power in the world. We read this bit about baptism. We think it's random, but it's not. It's Paul directly connecting the practice of baptism to the defeat of first things, principalities in your life. He's saying, remember your sacred baptism. Remember, you belong to Christ's new humanity. Think about that. Think about what it means. Don't get dragged back to elementary school. Come on. You've graduated. Move on up. Stay with Christ. You belong to him, not them. Today, church, we got a way actually to put this in practice. We've got water prepared, our baptismal prepared. We're going to open our space, if you will, for spontaneous baptisms. We had one gentleman come forward in the first service, someone who said, I want to be water baptized today. I've chosen to follow Jesus, but I haven't taken that next step in identifying with Christ in that way. And so today, our band's going to come on here. You guys can come on out, if you will. We're going to sing a song and worship together. And if you're saying today, I want to get water baptized, I never have before, but I know God is asking me to do this, you can begin to move right over to the other side of the room. We got folks back there. You're like, man, I dressed up real nice. I wore my best pair of flip-flops today and summer t-shirt and shorts. Listen, we've got clothes for you. It's all good. You can change back there. Some of you are like, man, I'll do the water dunk, hit my head in water challenge, but you haven't been water baptized. Come on. We need to follow Christ in this way and obey him. This happens, again, through your faith, not your parents' faith, not your church's faith, not the institution's faith, but your faith. Did you have faith in the working of God if and when you've been baptized? This is how we begin to enter into the power of Christ.